Battle of the Bulge was on, and the Huns were doing okay by it. Some of our troops were sent north to help fight in the Bulge. All units of the group displaced to the rear, 3,000 or 4,000 yards, to effectively support the Corps in its defensive missions. The 741st Field Artillery Battalion, 8-inch howitzer, was attached to the group on December the 27th. The marshalling yards at Saarbrücken was harassed during the night by the 8-inch guns of the group. The group commander, Lieutenant Colonel James Kraft, held a conference with battalion commanders at the CP on the night of December the 28th. He said the mission of the Corps was the protection of the Severn Gap, preventing the Germans from attacking south along the west side of the Vosges Mountain and capturing the Severn Gap, thus cutting off all friendly troops east of the mountain. In case of withdrawal, we were to occupy the Maginot Line as our first delaying line. Areas to the rear were assigned for reconnaissance and organization, and a final displacement plan was prepared by the group. A telephone call from 15 Corps ordered all personnel to begin carrying gas masks as a precautionary measure. During the day of December the 31st, the observers reported increased movement of enemy tanks and infantry, and at 23:45 hours, an attack was launched against the center of the Corps area. No artillery preparation was preceded to attack. The enemy pressure on the front lines had increased, and some penetration had been made as the month ended. Upon word from higher headquarters, all units were alerted for possible paratroop attack and instructed to double all guards and man all 50 caliber machine guns throughout the night. So December 1944 came to an end, but things didn't look too bright. The Germans on the move and our group headquarters battery turning in dual jobs, artillery and trying to be infantrymen. Would 1945 see the end of this war? That's what was the question on all of our minds. January 1945, and the Germans were putting pressure on our sector. The enemy attack continued during the second day of January 1945. A group ground observer located approximately 200 enemy infantry and 5 tanks moving up to attack our position. He adjusted and firing 231 rounds of 155 millimeter gun and 88 ammunition, disabling 1 tank, forcing the others back, and left enemy dead scattered over the area. Prisoners of war later confirmed the effectiveness of the fire by revealing the 1st Battalion 38th SS Panzer Grenadier Regiment was destroyed by American artillery fire on this date and hour. During the early hours of the morning before daylight on the 3rd of January, an intercepted report from the 44th Infantry Division stated that Gross Redderching had been occupied by the enemy, and the attack was continuing south and southwest in the direction of Singling and Aachen. 2 batteries of the 989 Field Artillery Battalion were ordered by group to displace to positions to the rear and to avoid being run over. At 0800 hours, the executive of the 989 Field Artillery Battalion reported to group that he was closing the battalion CP in Aachen because enemy tanks and infantry had entered the town. At the same time, a report was received from the 100th Infantry Division Artillery that an artillery battery had been overrun in a position only 1,000 yards north of Group CP. Security guards were recalled by group as rifle fire was coming into Edding and in the vicinity of group installation. At 0840 hours, the Group CP was displaced to Saar Union. This made the first time since our entry into combat in November 1943 that group was forced to retreat. At the moment, however, the possibility of a major enemy breakthrough was more important than the first retreat. At 1830 hours that evening, the commanding general of the 15th Corps Artillery ordered us to move from Saar Union to avoid losses from an expected 280mm German railway gun shelling. That night, Saar Union was shelled by that railway gun, and the previous location of our kitchen was hit by one of the bomb-sized artillery shells. The CP was displaced to Demergen, France. A counterattack by the 2nd French Armored Division cleared Aachen and restored friendly positions south of Gross-Retterging. The group moved to Armagen on the 5th of January and established a CP in a large barrack just outside of the town. The barracks were built by the French but occupied by the Germans from the time they overran France and until the Americans overran this area. This proved to be our CP for a considerable length of time, as the German forces were retained, and a period of static warfare developed during the inclement weather of January and February. A report was received on the 23rd of January from the Tactical Air Reconnaissance through 15th Corps that approximately 500 enemy motor vehicles, motorcycles, half-tracks, and tanks had been observed on roads northeast of Zweibrücken, German moving southwest towards our sector. G2 of the 15th Corps estimated the force as one Panzer Division, and the group alerted all attached battalions for the attack. The group's heavy artillery, in conjunction with the division artillery, unmercifully raked the roads with artillery fire, leading to our front whenever enemy tanks or vehicles were reported moving towards our lines. Since the Germans moved their reinforcements mainly at night, the group harassed enemy supply and reinforcement lines with guns ranging from the captured German 88 guns to the 240mm howitzers. Counter-battery fire on our units increased during the month. The shift of the German 35th Artillery Brigade sound and flash units from the Polish front to the 7th Army front was the cause. As January was coming to a close, I want to say that the wire crews had done a very good job in this trying month. But as rabbit hunters with a .30 caliber machine gun, they have a lot to learn. It was in January that Colonel John C. Cook received 2 awards, and also the group received commendations from the commanding general of the 44th Infantry Division for participating in repulsing the enemy attacks in the 44th Infantry Division sector. This is the award for Colonel John C. Cook. Former commander of this group was awarded the Legion of Merit for exceptional meritorious service in the performance of outstanding service in Italy from the 1st of December 1943 to the 3rd of July 1944. The second award for Colonel John C. Cook was awarded by His Majesty the King the following British decoration: Honorary Officer of the Military Division of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire. Colonels Cook planning, control, and the use of the group during the Lire Valley and the Conceal Battle was the occasion for the award. February 1945. Things have quieted down some. The enemy continues his defensive attitude, and the missions of the group remains general support. Warm weather also helped to melt snow and cause floods, and the airfield had to be moved. On the 15th of February, the 44th and the 63rd Infantry Division straightened out their lines between them. The 100th Infantry Division requested that the 932nd Field Artillery destroy the Friedenberg Farm. This had been built up as an enemy strong point and was destroyed with 7 target hits, 5 of which were delayed fuse. The 989 Field Artillery Battalion, which has 2 German 88 guns, are now down to 52 rounds of ammunition. The last 52 rounds were fired into Volkmunster, and the guns were retired. On the 26th of February, we received word that the German 380 millimeter gun would probably be back in action. The gun would be in the vicinity of Zweibrücken. The group made arrangements to fire on this gun if it fired. On the 18th of February, Lieutenant Colonel Kraft was promoted to the rank of colonel. So February closed out as a wet and muddy month, but it looked like the Germans had been beaten in all of his attempts to break through the Allied lines. With March came the rumors that a push would be on soon. The veteran 3rd and the 45th Infantry Divisions were moved up to spearhead the 15th Corps attack on the vaulted Siegfried Line. The group began jockeying its artillery in position for the offensive, which proved later to be the last one for the 7th Army on the continent of Europe. On March 6th, Staff Sergeant Raymond E. Goldenfinney, Battery Motor Staff Sergeant, was injured and evacuated. The 515th Field Artillery Battalion, 155 millimeter guns, was attached to the group on the 14th of March, which added more striking power to the 194th group. Already attached were 2 8-inch howitzer battalions and 1 240 millimeter howitzer battalion, which placed us in the role of fullback as the 3rd and 45th Infantry Divisions hit the Siegfried Line. Special attention was to be rendered to the 45th Division sector by the group. The night of March 15th was quiet at 0100 hours when the 3rd and the 45th Division jumped off in a long-awaited attack. The attack was made without an artillery preparation, and a tactical surprise was gained. This offensive progressed with little opposition except for mines. The group fired harassing and counter-battery missions in support of the attack. The progress of the advance continued without undue trouble, and during the night of the 18th, the group fired intensive harassing missions in the 45th Infantry Division sector. The Allied lines, along with the whole front, were surging eastward, and as the armies in the north reached the Rhine River, the 7th Army was battering the Siegfried Line. On the 17th of March, the group command post was moved to Walsheim, Germany. Yes, for the first time we had crossed the German-French border into the home of the enemy. While we were advancing into the Siegfried lines, the 3rd Army sent an armored division south across the Moselle River and back of the German lines, which were busily engaged on our front. As little resistance was encountered from the German rear echelon troops, the armored division reached Kaiserlauten on the 19th of March. The trap of the Saarland was rapidly being sprung on the enemy west of the Rhine River. The town of Kaiserlauten, Germany, being several miles to the rear of the Germans fighting in our sector, only one thing remained for the enemy: to try and retreat east across the Rhine River. The 20th day of March was clear, spring day, and ideal for air observation. The enemy was seen to be withdrawing, and the 194th Field Artillery Group units was gradually getting out of firing range. An air observer of the 697th Field Artillery Battalion, while flying an air reconnaissance mission, located an enemy column on the road east of Hamburg. The accurate adjustment of fire created havoc to the enemy column. A ground inspection of that area the following day revealed that 30 wagons and 32 vehicles, in addition to numerous soldiers killed, had been destroyed. With the Siegfried Line breached and advanced elements in Hamburg, Germany, the artillery of the group was out of range. The following day, the group and attached units moved to Hamburg and the vicinity. The German troops that were not trapped in the breakthrough were disorganized and rapidly moving towards the Rhine. Friendly infantry advanced with little opposition, and as the offensive continued, there was no need at this time for heavy artillery of our group. By the 25th of March, the west bank of the Rhine in our sector was completely held by friendly elements. During the hours of darkness on the 24th, all of our units occupied position to support the 3rd and the 45th Infantry Division crossing the Rhine. With the 3rd and the 45th Division still abreast, the 15th Corps attacked it at 0230 hours on the 26th of March. Both divisions crossed the Rhine against medium to stiff resistance, and by nightfall had secured a bridgehead east of the Rhine, 15 miles wide and 8 miles in depth. The group artillery fired a preparation for the crossing in the 3rd Division zone, but none was fired in the 45th Division zone. Initial resistance was lighter in the zone of the 3rd Division. After H hour, we fired an intensive harassing and interdiction program in support of the crossing. At this time, the 515th Field Artillery Battalion was relieved of attachment to our group and was attached to the 413th Field Artillery Group. The group in its entirety crossed the Rhine River on a pontoon bridge the morning following the attack. The group crossed at the town of Ham at 1100 hours on the 27th of March, 1945. After crossing the Rhine River, all units went into position in Klein Rohrheim, but no supporting fire was needed by the infantry. The following day, a 40-mile advance was made as we moved to Gross Othheim and occupied position to support the crossing of the main river by the 45th Infantry Division. There was no hand-waving or cheerful faces from the German civilian as we advanced east from the Rhine River towards the heart of the nation which had brought terror and destruction, the likes of which the world had never before encountered. German prisoners of war by the hundreds moved towards the west and into Allied prisoner of war cages, as our guns and equipment and the men moved east to deliver the final blow to the army and country which early in the war almost conquered the world. The month of March ended with the 45th Division crossing the main river against slight opposition. However, one regiment met stiff resistance in the town of Offenburg. We fired heavy artillery concentration into the town throughout the entire day. All battalions were able to cover the town with mass fire. On March 18, 1945, Captain James F. Fournier, Group Air Officer, was promoted to the rank of Major. So, March is now in the history books. April 1945 opened and the group continued to support the 45th Infantry Division. After suffering 4,682 casualties, the town of Offenburg surrendered at 0900 on the 3rd of April. The advance continued. The group main mission developed into taking prisoners bypassed by the infantry. On the 11th of April, the group moved into position and fire could be placed on Bamberg. At 1500 hours, the 3rd and the 45th Infantry Division resumed the attack with Bamberg, its first object. Bamberg fell, and group was given march orders and remained on wheels. German fighter planes strafed group air strip and dropped anti-personnel bombs. Lieutenant Thompson was wounded in the chest. As our advance approached Nuremberg, resistance stiffened and enemy air activity increased considerably. We displaced a position at Neuenhof and emplaced the battalion to fire on Nuremberg. The Germans offered stiff and fanatical resistance during the 3-day siege of Nuremberg. The city was completely demolished as our heavy artillery added to the air bombardment which the city had undergone during the course of the war. Nuremberg, which Hitler had proclaimed the most German of all German cities, was completely in American control on April the 19th. A flag-raising ceremony and victory parade was held in Nuremberg on the 21st of April. The parade was composed of various units of the 15 Corps. Plans were revised and the group reverted to the general support of the 45th Infantry Division. At 2000 hours on April the 23rd, we were ordered to move south of the 15 Corps north boundary prior to daylight. The 45th Division attacked at 1500 hours on the 26th of April and crossed the Danube River against little resistance. Following our crossing on the Danube at 2200 hours on a rainy night of April the 27th, we established a command post in Bergenheim. The 30th of April found all guns of the battalion in position to concentrate full firepower on the city of Munich, Germany. The resistance in Munich was fairly stiff, the urge to fight being maintained by a few remaining SS troops. However, at the end of the day, the city was well cleared except for isolated strong points and a few scattered snipers. April was a month of pursuit and rapid action, punctuated by isolated stands in large cities. The group moved and fought to give every possible support to the infantry. German aircraft was more active during the middle of the month than it had been for a long period of time. The Luftwaffe left no stone unturned as they directed their strafing and bombing attacks against our airstrips, gun position, and military traffic on the roads. When Julius Streicher and his Nazi friends came into power in 1933, Nuremberg was a city of toys. Its dolls, puppets, lead soldiers, and mechanical trains poured out in an endless stream to all parts of the world. It even looked like a toy city, with its 12th century walk surrounding the old part of town, its castles on the hilltop, its tower and its spires, and its crooked little streets. It was a home of woodcarvers and handicraftsmen of all kinds, as well as the Meistersingers, immortalized in Wagner's opera. Now, of course, Nuremberg is no more. It is simply a heap of rubble like so many other German cities. The story of its destruction is really like the story of the Jew-baiter Streicher and his Nazi henchmen. It was through his influence that Nuremberg was chosen as the home of the Nazi Party celebration. In the closing days of April 1945 gave Nuremberg a different environment. Instead of the fanatical Heil Hitlers, which echoed through the city on days of celebration, it was the deafening roar of American armed might, in which we all played a part. That leaves this deadened city in ruin, but free from the poisonous Nazi myth. In April, we had 3 men leave our battery to go home to the U.S. They were Technician 4th Class John M. Walker, Captain Thomas Wright, the Catholic chaplain, and Sergeant Walter C. Cox. Lieutenant Carl Kaufman, Group Liaison Pilot, awarded the 5th Oak Leaf Cluster to his Air Medal. Thus, the month of April is now in the history books. May 1945. It looks like this could be the month that this war could end. The German army is in shambles. Prisoners of war were everywhere. Official announcement was received on May 2nd that the German troops in Italy had surrendered unconditionally. On May 3rd, units of the group moved to a rendezvous area on the west bank of the Inn River in the vicinity of Wassenberg. German soldiers were surrendering by the hundreds and were creating a difficult control problem. A prisoner of war enclosure was established and manned by 100 men from the 194th Group to assist the 15 Corps military police. Complete enemy organizations were coming in using their own transportation and bringing their own food and kitchen trucks. Only the fanatical SS troops were nowhere to be found in the prisoners' lines. They later offered resistance at isolated spots. The Chief of Staff, German Army Group C, passed through our lines on the 4th of May, 1945, and instructions to all troops were to leave them pass. The group moved 65 miles to Seekirchen, Austria, on the 5th of May. Early in the day, an advance reconnaissance party from the group were reconnoitering for a command post for the 194th Field Artillery Group crossed the Salzrich River in Laufen. They entered the town of Matzi, Austria, and being the first American troops into town, received the surrender of the Hungarian Prime Minister and his staff. Being the first elements to enter this town, the group reconnaissance party had preceded the advance elements of the 86th Infantry Division. While investigating the town, the party was approached by an English-speaking German who introduced himself as the German ambassador to Hungary. He further stated that he wished to surrender the Prime Minister of Hungary to the American Armed Forces. The Hungarian Guards were disarmed, and the group reconnaissance party guarded the Prime Minister until the 86th Infantry Division Rifle Company was brought up for security, and the Allied military government could be contacted to take charge of the distinguished prisoner. The 194th Field Artillery Group later learned that the Prime Minister was turned over to the Allied War Crimes Commission, and the Hungarian Guards were taken to an Allied prisoner of war compound. The group was ordered to remain in Seekirchen, Austria, and to await further orders. Here we became involved in the processing of German prisoners. We had been the first American unit in the vicinity and soon had over 500 German prisoners of war on our hands. A German bus was procured and manned by the 194th Field Artillery Group. The bus was used to transport prisoners to the 3rd Infantry Division prisoner of war cage at Salzburg, Austria. The German Army Group C, operating in the front of the 7th Army, surrendered unconditionally, effective at noon on the 6th of May, 1945. This surrender included all German forces opposing the 7th Army except for isolated pockets. The 194th Field Artillery Group moved into a large 3-story missionary building previously occupied by the German anti-aircraft warning control system personnel operating in the Salzburg area. The building was located just on the outskirts of the city of Salzburg. Information was received on the 7th of May that all firing would receive at 14:01 hours that day. except in the case of self-defense. This information was received from the 15th Corps Artillery and was the prelude to the unconditional surrender of all German armed forces. Official announcement was received on the 8th day of May, 1945, that all German land, sea, and air forces surrendered unconditionally, effective at 1 minute after midnight on the 9th of May, 1945. The surrender terms were signed at Reims, France. Lieutenant General Walter B. Smith signed for the Allies as the representative of General of the Army Eisenhower. The 194th Field Artillery Group was in Austria when peace came to Europe on the 9th of May, 1945. As its case became hopeless, first one German army, then another surrendered. The last few days saw little fighting, and the group artillery did not fire a round after May 1st. German army units were fighting without direction, without communications, and without centralized control. After the German forces in Italy surrendered, it was only a matter of a few days until the German Army Group G, facing the U.S. 7th Army, followed with a subsequent capitulation of all German armed forces. At 1 minute past midnight on the 9th of May, 1945, the anti-aircraft units near Salzburg, Austria, fired a final salute in honor of the occasion. The 194th Group saw 485 days of active combat and 629 days overseas as the war against Germany ended. We had fought strong, well-directed, tough German forces who had the advantage of terrain, and we had seen others that disintegrated before the powers of the Allies. We saw the warfare position in Italy and in France. We supported successful breakthroughs and 2 offensives that failed at Cassino. And we engaged in pursuit of the enemy in Italy and in France and through Germany into Austria. The group directed the first 8-inch howitzer committed into battle, fought heavy artillery throughout the war, and inflicted great damage upon the enemy. During the 485 days of combat in Europe, the group fired 293,594 rounds of artillery ammunition, totaling 20,480 tons. So the war came to an end in Europe. No more shelling or being shelled. No more calling wiremen to go out into the night to fix a line that was out. No more radio men hunched over their equipment trying to make contact with an air observer. The CP quiet, no fire problems. But to try and tell this battery history as I have is hard. I have tried to get different men of the battery to tell their story and then put it on tape, and how grateful Bill Grunert and I are for all of the help. I don't know when the final tape will be made. As long as I can get the men of the battery to talk, I will try to fit it in on these tapes. To our fellow battery members who gave their lives for this victory, and to those who have left us, I wish to dedicate these tapes, so their names will always be remembered. Again, thanks to all who have helped to get these tapes together, and a very big thank you from the bottom of my heart. Curtis Deems. With the playing of taps in the background, we, the living, don't want to forget our comrades who were members of Group Headquarters Battery of the 194th Field Artillery. We were very fortunate that we only left 4 of our comrades overseas. They were Anthony Berger, Brooklyn, New York; Alvin E. Bolts, McCausland, Iowa; Leonard J. Carlson, East Providence, Rhode Island; and Harvey W. Clark of Omaha, Nebraska. Our record shows that as of March 1st, 1992, the following men of Headquarters Battery, 194th Field Artillery Group, have passed away. They are Anthony Berger, Brooklyn, New York; Alvin E. Bolts, McCausland, Iowa; Leonard J. Carlson, East Providence, Rhode Island; Harvey W. Clark, Omaha, Nebraska; Paul G. Hayes, Ludington, Michigan; Dominic R. Laterzo, Brooklyn, New York; Benjamin F. Bacowie, Stanford, Connecticut; James M. Moore, Albuquerque, New Mexico; Harold Waters, Vienna, Illinois; Francis V. Yagi, DeWitt, Iowa; Dwight W. Bingham, Missouri Valley, Iowa; Herbert Chamberlain, Hancock, New York; Dorrance W. Parson, Sioux City, Iowa; Ivan D. Scott, Vinay, Indiana; Howard J. Turney, Standish, Maine; William T. Huey, Roanoke, Alabama; Anthony V. Bonney, Wheeling, West Virginia; William Butsky, Niagara Falls, New York; Victor P. Cercero, Endicott, New York; George F. Reynolds, 215 Harrison Street, Rossville, Illinois; James B. Kraft, United States Army; Edward H. Gusky, Gulfport, Florida; Joseph Tett, Rochester, New York; the Reverend Thomas Wright, Tampa, Florida; Carol Ann Drayson, Davenport, Iowa; John C. Cook, Colonel, Santa Cruz, California; Howard L. Rose, Tucson, Arizona; Wayne W. Nida, Perry, Oklahoma; Preston B. Rulin, East Islip, New York; James E. Shoemaker, Statesville, North Carolina; Leonard F. Friedman, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania; Louis W. Jackman, Columbus, Ohio; Charles Weiss, Redland, California; Robert Berglund, St. Cloud, Minnesota; Harold H. Fursch, Davenport, Iowa; Walter C. Cox, Kinston, North Carolina; Raymond Goldenfinney, Rapid City, Illinois; James P. Pernay, Chicago, Illinois; Harold E. Wilson, Davenport, Iowa. John H. Steinett, member of the 194th Group Band, Noboin, Missouri. That is all that we know of at this time. Thank you. The following names are of the men who were members of Headquarters Battery, the 194th Field Artillery Group. Some were with the battery a short time, but yet they were a member of the battery. Also are the names of some band members who were attached to our battery. Also, one medic who was attached to the battery. James W. Adams, Dallas, Texas. Robert E. Adams, Roanoke, Alabama. Frank A. Afisco, Brooklyn, New York. Howard S. Aldemus, Hermosa, California. Clyde T. Allison, Franklin Square, New York. Burdette N. Anderson, Clinton, Iowa. Richard J. Anderson, Kitnani, Pennsylvania. Carol W. Andresen, Davenport, Iowa. William B. Babbs, West Des Moines, Iowa. Felix S. Belcher, Carnahan, Louisiana. Henry J. Bernanke, Depew, New York. Dwight W. Bingham, Missouri Valley, Iowa. Paul A. Bluer, West Bend, Iowa. Orville E. Bleecker, Hartley, Iowa. Rawl P. Boldelock, Waterville, Maine. Anthony V. Bonney, Wheeling, West Virginia. Noah H. Bowman, Smithland, Iowa. Walter Boykel, Webster, Massachusetts. Arnold Buckmeyer, Davenport, Iowa. Benjamin F. Bacowie, Stanford, Connecticut. Branch B. Burton, Birmingham, Alabama. William Butsky, Niagara Falls, New York. Roy H. Byers, Blanco, Texas. Joseph Catterbone, Drexel Hill, Pennsylvania. Robert Berglund, St. Cloud, Minnesota. Walter C. Cox, Kinston, North Carolina. Curtis W. Deems, Montgomery, Illinois. Edward M. DeRocker, Moline, Illinois. Raymond Donley, Grand Island, Nebraska. Jack Drivus, Waltham, Massachusetts. Paul W. Dunlap, Kokomo, Indiana. Alan T. Enfield, Gloversville, New York. Paul G. Fazenbaker, Westernport, Maryland. Frank E. Ferris, Ventura, California. Harold Furch, Davenport, Iowa. Francis J. Fitch, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Robert G. Frank, Scottsdale, Arizona. James F. Fournier, Toledo, Ohio. John Gall, Wheeling, West Virginia. Kemp B. Garrison, Easley, South Carolina. Frank A. Gado, Old Forge, Pennsylvania. Edward N. Gray, Port Ludlow, Washington. Frederick A. Griffith, Sharon, Pennsylvania. William H. Grunert, Lombard, Illinois. Raymond Goldenfinney, Rapid City, Illinois. Edward H. Gusky, Gulfport, Florida. Kenneth D. Haig, Corona Del Mar. William O. Hart, Detroit, Michigan. William J. Hawk, Milford, New Jersey. Paul G. Hayes, Ludington, Michigan. Morris Hayes, Cartersville, Georgia. William T. Huey, Roanoke, Alabama. Louis W. Jackman, Columbus, Ohio. William A. Johnston, Byron, Pennsylvania. Chester Klingler, Ada, Ohio. John B. Knight, Tampa, Florida. James B. Kraft, Colonel, U.S. Army. Edmund H. Lang, Laguna Hills, California. Russell D. Little, St. Albans, New York. Dominic R. Laterzo, Brooklyn, New York. Robert A. Mann, Chattanooga, Tennessee. Edward R. Mansworth, New York, New York. Raymond Milverstead, Great Falls, Montana. James M. Moore, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Al Nearing, Gaylord, Michigan. Wayne Nida, Perry, Oklahoma. Dorrance Parson, Sioux City, Iowa. James Pernay, Chicago, Illinois. George J. Piotrowski, Cudahy, Wisconsin. Lauren A. Prescott, Pocatello, Idaho. Ernest R. Phipps, Anaheim, California. Reverend Laverne S. Poole, North Towanda, New York. Howard W. Randler, Hickory Corners, Michigan. James F. Reeves, Nashville, Tennessee. Richard A. Reef, Cincinnati, Ohio. George F. Reynolds, Rossville, Illinois. Harold D. Riggs, Muscatine, Iowa. Clarence H. Schroeder, Michigan City, Indiana. Dean J. Scott, Valjoa, California. Fred W. Scott, Statesboro, South Carolina. Campbell W. Smith, Wilmington, North Carolina. David E. Smith, Nacogdoches, Pennsylvania. James E. Shoemaker, Statesville, North Carolina. Forrest A. Stanley, Wauponsee, Indiana. Edward T. Stevenson, Lake Ronkonkoma, New York. Frank P. Satila, Rockville, Connecticut. Jacob A. Talmadge, Bronx, New York. Joseph Tedesco, Newtonville, Massachusetts. Howard J. Turney, Standish, Maine. Marvin L. Thompson, Davenport, Iowa. Edward K. Thompson, St. Louis, Missouri. Jerry J. Tureen, Cambridge, Minnesota. William Van Orden, Muncie, New York. John M. Walker, Atlantic City, New Jersey. Albert H. Waters, Vienna, Illinois. Milton H. Weiss, West Bend, Wisconsin. Harold E. Wilson, Davenport, Iowa. Thomas A. Wright, Tampa, Florida. Francis V. Yagi, DeWitt, Iowa. Rollin M. Dutton, Traynor, Pennsylvania. Anthony LaRocco, East Greenbush, New York. Ramsey P. Locke, Colliersville, Tennessee. George Adams, El Paso, Texas. Fred Basile, Staten Island, New York. John C. Baker, Redford, Virginia. Vic Searle, Endicott, New York. Herbert Chamberlain, Hancock, New York. Edward R. Clare, unknown. John C. Cook, Santa Cruz, California. William Fisher, Adair, Iowa. Joseph B. Gibney, Davenport, Iowa. Elmer G. Hilson, North Dakota. Richard A. Judish, Rock Island, Illinois. Carl Kaufman, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Leonard Friedman, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Thomas LaFountain, St. Petersburg, Florida. Paul P. Martin, Abington, Virginia. Howard L. Maston, Dagsboro, Delaware. Reverend Thomas E. Madden, Altona, Pennsylvania. Philip F. O'Neill, Bywood, Pennsylvania. Harry H. Pearson, North Hollywood, California. Harry J. Powers, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Ivan D. Scott, Benet, Indiana. Elvin E. Bolts, McCausland, Iowa. Anthony Berger, Brooklyn, New York. Leonard J. Carlson, East Providence, Rhode Island. Harvey W. Clark, Omaha, Nebraska. Robert C. Allender, Davenport, Iowa. Reinhard G. Tahn, Davenport, Iowa. Everett L. Schroeder, Davenport, Iowa. Bland J. Kehoe, River Grove, Illinois. George W. Ackelson, Davenport, Iowa. Eldon Alfred, Davenport, Iowa. Floyd Alchin, Davenport, Iowa. Louis E. Andre, Davenport, Iowa. Kenneth D. Heer, Oklahoma. Richard Edwards, Sanford, Florida. Ernest H. Gergel, Sparta, Wisconsin. Lester Cath, Garner, North Carolina. Lauren C. Lindsay, North Carolina. Albert Stamper, Burlington, Iowa. Cletus H. Vogel, unknown. Robert W. Zost, Phoenix, Arizona. Raymond Sahlstrom, Chicago, Illinois. We have a Sergeant Wold and a Lieutenant Tupper. Last known they were at Fort Bragg. Lieutenant John Robison. Last known was Fort Bragg. John Worthman. He's a medic. Now here's the band. Sidney Katz, New York, New York. Herbie Chaparral, Newark, New Jersey. Vern E. Ford, Rippey, Iowa. Charles Hazelton, Kalmar, Iowa. Vince Romano, New York, New York. Weinswig, Lynn, Massachusetts. Bob Hoffman, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Louis Colombo, Brockton, Massachusetts. Delgiani Angelo, New York. Harold Jack, Vinton, Iowa. John F. Van Fossen, Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Darrell Reed, Boone, Iowa. Gary Beersborn, Liscombe, Iowa. John Stinnett, Neuboyne, Missouri. Harry A. Vaughn, Naugatuck, Connecticut. Bill Roberts, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Tabby Saltaro, New York, New York. And Joe Satori, unknown. The leader of the band, whose name has been given already, was Robert Berglund from St. Cloud, Minnesota. That is all that I have at this time. I believe that makes a total of about 170 men that I can account for. There are